I am the mother of a saint, and 5 days before my son died, he told me something that seemed like delirium. He was 15 years old, dying of leukemia, thin, pale, hairless. He took my hand, looked into my eyes, and said, Mom, when I leave, you will meet a woman who doesn't know me. She will have my eyes, and through her, you will understand why I had to go so young. I thought it was the fever talking, but Carlo wasn't delirious. He was prophesying. Before I continue, where are you watching this from? Are you in pain right now? Have you lost someone you love? Subscribe to this channel because what I'm about to share proves that God never wastes our pain, that death is not the end of love, and that sometimes we must lose what we love most to discover what we were always meant to find. If I told you that my 15-year-old son, 5 days before dying, predicted I would meet a stranger 4 years later who would transform my understanding of his death, would you believe me? If I told you he described this person in detail before she existed in my life, would you consider it possible? And if I revealed that this meeting happened on the exact date Carlo specified, in the exact place he indicated, would you understand that God orchestrates details we cannot see until we're ready? My name is Antonia Acutis. I was born in 1964 into a traditional Catholic family, but my faith was cultural, not deep. I married Andrea in 1987. We had Carlo in 1991 in London, and for 15 years my life was being his mother. Carlo wasn't like other children. From age 3, he asked to enter churches. At 7, he began attending daily mass before school. Every single day. He prayed the rosary, visited homeless people, programmed websites about Eucharistic miracles. He had a phrase he repeated: everyone is born original, but many die as photocopies. My routine was simple. Wake up, prepare breakfast, take Carlo to mass, accompany him to school, work, pick him up, family dinner, pray the rosary together, sleep, and repeat. I was happy. Not explosive happiness, but quiet, deep, complete happiness. I had my husband, my son, my family. Carlo was my joy. Then everything collapsed. April 2006. Carlo began complaining of severe headaches. May, June, July, dizziness, vomiting, paleness, doctors, tests, MRIs. September 2006, the diagnosis: acute promyelocytic leukemia, fulminant with brain metastases. When the doctor told us, I collapsed. Andrea squeezed my hand. Carlo remained calm, looked at the doctor, and asked, How long do I have? The doctor hesitated. Weeks, maybe days. Carlo nodded. Then I must live every second. He was 15 and more mature than me. Carlo continued living. He went to Mass, received the Eucharist, prayed the rosary, didn't complain, didn't cry, wasn't afraid. He said, Mom, the Eucharist is my highway to heaven. Inside, I was dying with him. Every night when Carlo slept, I went to my room and cried silently. I begged God, please, don't take him from me. October 7th, 2006. Carlo had been hospitalized 3 weeks. The treatments weren't working. That morning when I entered his room, he was awake, sitting in bed, looking out the window. Sunlight illuminated his pale face. Good morning, my son, I said. He smiled. Good morning, Mom. I sat beside the bed and took his hand. How are you? Well, he said calmly. I held back tears. Carlo, you're in the hospital. How can you say you're well? He squeezed my hand. Mom, I'm well because Jesus is with me. I burst into tears. Carlo, I don't want you to leave. He dried my tears. I know, Mom, but the time is coming. My heart stopped. Don't say that. Mom, listen, I need to tell you something important. I breathed deeply. Okay, I'm listening. He looked at me with that deep, mature gaze. Mom, I'm going to leave, that's certain. But you won't be alone. You will meet a woman you don't know yet. She will have eyes like mine, and through her, you will understand why I had to leave so young. I blinked. A woman with eyes like yours? You'll understand when the time comes, Mom. I thought it was fever or medication. My son, you're tired. Rest. But he squeezed my hand hard. Mom, I'm not delirious. I'm telling you the truth. Jesus showed me. Jesus showed you? Carlo nodded. Yes, I saw it in a vision. A woman you don't know, and when you look into her eyes, you'll see me. and you'll understand that I didn't leave. I just transformed into something bigger. I started trembling. Carlo, I don't understand. He smiled. You will understand, Mom. In 4 years. On October 12th, 2010, the anniversary of my death, you will meet her. In Assisi, near my tomb. She will be there, and you'll know it's her because when you see her eyes, you'll feel me present. 4 years. October 12th, 2010. Assisi, a woman with his eyes. It sounded like a fever dream. Why would I meet this woman? Because God doesn't waste anything, Mom. Not even death. My death will seem like the end, but it's actually a seed. And this woman is part of the harvest. There are words that only make sense years later. That afternoon, I told Andrea what Carlo had said. Andrea, Carlo said I'll meet a woman in 4 years who has his eyes. Andrea looked confused. A woman with his eyes? What does that mean? I don't know. He said it's in Assisi on the anniversary of his death. Andrea sighed. He's heavily sedated. Maybe he's confused. But he seemed so sure. 2 days later, October 9th, Carlo worsened. Internal bleeding, intensive care, sedated, intubated. I couldn't speak with him again. The night of October 11th, I stayed by his bed all night. At 6:45 a.m. on October 2006, Carlo's heart stopped. I was holding his hand. The monitor screamed. Doctors rushed in. Cardiac massage, adrenaline, shocks. Carlo didn't return. After 15 minutes, the doctor stopped. I'm sorry. I didn't scream, didn't cry in that moment. I stayed looking at my son's face. He was at peace, pale, thin, but at peace. Andrea hugged me. We cried for hours. When we left the hospital, the sun was high. The world continued normal. People went to work, laughed, and I had just lost my son. We buried Carlo October 13th in Assisi. It was his request. Hundreds attended the funeral. I remember little, only staring at the coffin thinking, how am I going to live without him? In the following months, I lived on autopilot. Wake, pray, cry, sleep. Repeat. The house was empty. Carlo's room intact. I went to his tomb every week, sat there, talked to him. Carlo, you said I wouldn't be alone, but I am. 1 year passed, then 2, then 3. The pain didn't pass. 4 years after his death, I still hadn't recovered. They say time heals, but it's not true. Time only teaches you to live with pain. I continued going to his tomb every week, entering his room, looking at photos and crying. Andrea told me, Antonia, you must move forward. Carlo wouldn't want to see you like this. But how does one live without a son? I prayed every day, but everything was mechanical. I was alive, but not living. By October 2010, I was preparing for the 4th anniversary. Every year on October 12th, I went to Assisi and spent the entire day at his tomb. That year was no different. I packed my bag, told Andrea I was going alone, I needed solitude, and took the early train from Milan to Assisi. The journey was long, giving me time to think, remember, cry privately while watching the Italian countryside. I arrived in Assisi around noon. The city was beautiful. Ancient stones, winding streets, churches everywhere. There was a holiness to the place that I both loved and found painful. It reminded me of Carlo's faith, his devotion, his choice to be buried here. I went directly to the cemetery. It was quiet, peaceful. I knelt before his grave, placed fresh flowers, began to pray. Carlo, my son, it's been 4 years. 4 years without your smile, your voice. I miss you so much it hurts. I don't know how to move forward. I stayed there for hours, talking, crying, praying. By mid-afternoon, I was exhausted. I decided to walk around Assisi before heading to the train station. I wandered through narrow streets, stopping occasionally. Everything reminded me of Carlo. Around 4 p.m., I found myself near the Basilica of St. Francis. I hadn't planned to go inside, but something drew me there. I entered the basilica. It was quiet, just a few tourists scattered throughout. I walked slowly, looking at the famous frescoes, remembering how Carlo had loved the stories of St. Francis. I found a pew near the back and sat down, just existing in that sacred space. That's when I noticed her. A young woman, maybe early 20s, sitting 3 rows ahead. I couldn't see her face clearly, but something about her presence was compelling. She was praying intensely, head bowed, hands clasped. There was desperation in her posture that I recognized. After about 10 minutes, she stood up and walked toward the side chapel. As she passed me, I caught a glimpse of her face, and my heart stopped. Her eyes. She had eyes exactly like Carlo's. The same shade of brown, the same depth, the same gentle intensity. It was impossible, but undeniable. Was this the woman Carlo had mentioned? 4 years ago, he'd said, "You will meet a woman you don't know. She will have eyes like mine." Could this be her? On October 12th, 2010, exactly as he'd predicted? In Assisi, exactly where he'd said? I stood up, legs trembling, and followed her to the side chapel. She was standing before a statue of Mary praying, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what to do. Should I approach her? What would I say? I took a deep breath, whispered a prayer for courage, and walked up to her. "Excuse me," I said softly in Italian. She turned, startled, quickly wiping tears. Up close, the resemblance to Carlo's eyes was even more striking. "Yes?" she said, voice shaky. "I'm sorry to disturb you," I said, "but I noticed you were very emotional, and I wondered if you're okay." She looked at me for a long moment, deciding whether to trust me. Then she said, "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I came here to say goodbye." "Goodbye?" "To life," she said simply. "I came to Assisi to visit St. Francis one last time before I end things. I've lost everything. My faith, my hope, my reason to keep going. I thought maybe if I came here, maybe God would give me a reason to stay. But I don't feel anything, just emptiness." My heart broke. This young woman with Carlo's eyes was planning to take her own life, and I'd found her, exactly as Carlo had predicted. "Please," I said urgently, "sit with me. Just for a few minutes. I need to tell you something." She hesitated, then nodded. We walked back to the pews and sat down. "My name is Antonia. 4 years ago today, my 15-year-old son died of leukemia. His name was Carlo Acutis." Her eyes widened. "Carlo Acutis? The boy who made the website about Eucharistic miracles? You know about him?" Everyone who researches faith online knows about Carlo Acutis. His website was one of the first things I found when I was searching for reasons to believe. But that was years ago. I didn't know he had died. I'm so sorry. He died on October 12th, 2006. Today is the 4th anniversary. I paused. 5 days before he died, Carlo told me something that seemed like nonsense. He said I would meet a woman 4 years later on the anniversary of his death in Assisi. A woman I didn't know. A woman with eyes like his. She stared at me. "You think I'm that woman?" "You have his eyes," I said simply. "Exactly his eyes. Same color, same depth, same intensity. And you're here on October 12th, 2010, in Assisi, exactly as he predicted. I don't believe in coincidences. So, yes, I think you're the woman he told me about." Tears filled her eyes. "But I'm nobody. I'm a mess. I'm about to kill myself. How could I possibly help you understand anything?" "Tell me your story," I said gently. "I believe God brought us together for a reason." And so she told me. Her name was Sophia Marchetti, 23 years old, from Naples, nominally Catholic family but had drifted from faith. University, engineering degree, graduated with honors. But in the past 2 years, everything had fallen apart. Her father died suddenly of a heart attack. Her mother fell into depression, now in a psychiatric facility. Sophia tried to hold everything together, working, paying bills, caring for her mother. 6 months ago, she had a breakdown, lost her job, couldn't pay rent, was evicted. Moved in with a friend, but that became toxic. 2 weeks ago, her boyfriend of 3 years left her. So I decided I was done. Sophia said flatly. I had nothing left. No family, no home, no job, no relationship. I thought maybe I should pray one last time, give God one last chance. So I came to Assisi. If I felt nothing, I would end it tonight. If I felt something, maybe I'd reconsider. But I've been here all day, and I felt nothing but emptiness. Until now, I said quietly. Until now, she repeated, looking at me with those eyes that were so painfully like Carlo's. Why did your son predict this? Sophia asked. I don't know, I admitted. But Carlo didn't waste words. If he said you were important, if he said I would understand something through you, then there's a reason. You're the proof that his death wasn't wasted. She looked confused. How? Carlo died at 15. For 4 years, I've asked God why. Why take such a good boy so young? And God has seemed silent. Until today. A young woman about to give up, who found reason to keep searching because of a website my 15-year-old son created before he died. Don't you see? Carlo's death wasn't the end of his purpose, it was the expansion of it. Sophia was crying now, different tears. I found his website when I was 18, she said. First year of university, questioning everything. I typed, "Is God real?" into a search engine, and somehow I found Carlo's Eucharistic Miracles site. I spent hours reading through documented miracles, scientific evidence, testimonies, and I thought, if this boy, this teenager, believed in all this enough to create such a comprehensive resource, maybe there's something to it. Maybe faith isn't just for weak people. Did it bring you back to faith? For a while, she said. I started going to Mass again, even went to confession. But then life got hard and I drifted away. I forgot about Carlo's website, forgot about God. But you came back, I said. Today, when you were at your lowest, you didn't go to a bar or just end things. You came to a church. You came to Assisi. You came looking for God, even if you didn't realize it. Sophia nodded slowly. I guess I did. Some part of me was still hoping. That's faith, I said. Not the absence of doubt, but the presence of hope, even in doubt. Carlo taught me that. He had questions, too. He wondered why God allowed suffering, but he chose to trust anyway, to hope anyway, to love anyway. And look, 4 years after his death, his work is still saving lives. Your life. But I'm not saved yet, Sophia said. I'm still broken. Still have no job, no home, no future. But you're alive, and I said firmly. And as long as you're alive, there's hope. There's possibility. There's purpose. What purpose could I possibly have? I don't know your specific purpose, I admitted. But God doesn't orchestrate meetings like this for no reason. Carlo predicted this encounter 4 years ago, 5 days before he died. He was specific. October 12th, 2010, Assisi. A woman with his eyes. That detail doesn't happen by accident. Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then, what do you think he wanted you to understand? I said slowly, he wanted me to understand that his death wasn't a tragedy without meaning. It was a sacrifice with purpose. He died, yes, but his work continues. The website he created is still reaching people. The example he set is still inspiring people. And you're the proof. You're a living testament that Carlo's short life had eternal impact. But why me specifically? Why would God show Carlo my eyes? I looked at her carefully. Can I tell you what I think? I think God gave you Carlo's eyes so I couldn't miss you. So when I saw you, I would know instantly. This is the person. This is the reason. Because if you just had a story but not the physical resemblance, I might have thought it was coincidence. But the eyes, Sophia. The exact same eyes. That's not coincidence. That's a sign from God that I cannot ignore. More tears. I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough. None of us are good enough, Rain, I said. That's the whole point of grace. God doesn't use us because we're worthy. He uses us to make us worthy. Carlo wasn't special because he was perfect. He was special because he let God work through his imperfections. We sat in silence. Finally, Sophia said, "What do I do now?" First, I said, "You promise me you won't hurt yourself. Promise me you'll give life another chance." She hesitated, then nodded. "I promise. At least for today." Second, you come with me. I'm staying in Assisi tonight. You'll stay with me. We'll have dinner, talk, figure out next steps together. You don't have to do that, Sophia protested. You don't even know me. But Carlo did, I said. Somehow he knew you, and he wanted me to find you, so I'm trusting that. Sophia started crying again, but with relief. Thank you. We left the basilica together and walked through Assisi streets as the sun began to set. I showed her where Carlo was buried. We stood together before his grave. Carlo, this is Sophia. She's the woman you told me about. She has your eyes, just like you said. And I understand now. I understand that your death wasn't wasted, that God has been working through you all along. Sophia placed her hand on the gravestone. Thank you, Carlo. I don't know how you knew about me or why you cared, but thank you. Your website saved me once, and today your mother saved me again. I won't forget this. That night at the hotel, Sophia and I talked for hours. I told her about Carlo's life, his faith, his death. She told me about her struggles, her doubts, her pain. And slowly I began to see what God was doing. He was using my pain to heal her pain. Can I ask you something? Sophia said around midnight. Do you think Carlo is in heaven? Yes, I said without hesitation. I know he is. I've felt his presence too many times, seen too many impossible things happen. He's not just in heaven, he's active in heaven, still working, still praying, still caring about us. Then maybe, Sophia said hesitantly, maybe he's praying for me right now. I'm certain of it, I said. Absolutely certain. The next morning, we discussed practical matters. Sophia needed a job, a place to stay. I made phone calls. Through contacts in the Catholic community, I found her a temporary position at a youth center in Milan, with housing included. It's working with teenagers, I explained. Teaching computer skills, helping with homework. Part-time, but includes a small apartment. Would you be interested? Sophia's eyes filled with tears. How are you doing this? Because Carlo asked me to, I said simply. Sophia moved to Milan 2 weeks later. I helped her settle in, introduced her to people at my parish, checked on her regularly. Over the following months, I watched her transform. She threw herself into work at the youth center, connecting with troubled teenagers. She started attending daily mass. She went to confession regularly. She began to heal. And so did I. For the first time since Carlo's death, I felt alive again. Not because the pain was gone, but because the pain had purpose. 1 year after we met, Sophia called with news. Antonia, I've been accepted into a program. What program? Missionary work in Africa, teaching technology skills to students. It's a 2-year commitment. I was quiet, then said, Carlo would be so proud. You think so? I know so. He always said technology should serve humanity. That's exactly what you'll be doing. I wouldn't be doing any of it if he hadn't made that website, if you hadn't found me, if God hadn't orchestrated all of it. Before I continue, write in the comments, God's timing is perfect. Just those 4 words, because when you declare that, something shifts. Faith grows, hope increases. God begins to move in powerful ways. Sophia left for Africa in October 2011, 5 years after Carlo's death. She promised to stay in touch, sending emails every few weeks about her work, the students she was teaching, the lives being changed. Each email reminded me that Carlo's prophecy hadn't been just about Sophia. It had been about both of us. She needed to be saved from despair. I needed to be saved from purposeless grief. But the story doesn't end there. In 2012, I received another email from Sophia. The subject? I met another one. I opened it immediately. Antonia, something incredible happened. I was teaching a computer class to teenage girls in Uganda. One girl, maybe 14, stayed after to ask questions. And when she looked up at me, I saw it. She had the same eyes. Carlo's eyes, that same depth, intensity. I felt chills. I asked her name. She said Consolata. She's an orphan, doesn't know her parents, but Antonia, those eyes. It was like Carlo was staring at me through this African teenager. I read the email 3 times, hands shaking. Carlo had said, she will have eyes like mine. He'd said she, singular. But maybe it wasn't singular. Maybe it was plural. Maybe God was marking multiple people with Carlo's eyes, creating a chain of connection. I wrote back immediately, trust it. God is doing something bigger than we understand. Stay close to this girl. Over the next months, Sophia became a mentor to Consolata, teaching her advanced computer skills, telling her about Carlo Acutis, and Consolata flourished, just as Sophia had flourished under my attention. She reminds me of Carlo, Sophia wrote. Not just the eyes, but the spirit. She's so devoted to God, so interested in using technology for good, so mature beyond her years. In 2013, Consolata designed her first website, a resource about clean water initiatives in Africa. It wasn't as sophisticated as Carlo's site, but it was made with the same heart, using technology to serve humanity and glorify God. When Sophia sent me screenshots, I cried. The pattern was continuing. Carlo's vision was multiplying. In 2014, Sophia returned to Italy after completing her 2-year commitment. She brought Consolata with her, having arranged for the girl to attend a Catholic school in Milan with a full scholarship. I can't leave her behind, Sophia explained. She has no family there, and she has so much potential. I met Consolata in person for the first time in September 2014, 8 years after Carlo's death. And Sophia was right. This girl had Carlo's eyes, not just similar, identical. Signora Acutis, she said shyly, Sophia told me about your son. I wish I could have met him. His work inspired me. You're meeting him now, I said gently. Through Sophia, through your own calling, through those eyes. He's present in all of it. Over the next years, I watched Consolata grow. She excelled in school, especially technology courses. She attended daily mass like Carlo had. She volunteered at homeless shelters like Carlo had. She radiated joy like Carlo had. It was eerie and comforting simultaneously. By 2016, a pattern had become undeniable. First Sophia, then Consolata. Both with Carlo's eyes, both at crucial moments, both becoming exactly who they needed to be through connection to Carlo's legacy. I started wondering, were there others? I didn't have to wonder long. In 2017, I received a letter from a young man named Matteo in Sicily. He wrote, Signora Acutis, 3 years ago, I was in a dark place, depressed, addicted to drugs, contemplating suicide. Someone gave me a holy card with your son's picture and told me to pray to him. I looked at Carlo's photo and felt something strange, like I was looking in a mirror. We have the same eyes, exactly the same. I started researching Carlo's life, the letter continued, reading about his faith, his purity, his purpose. And slowly I started changing. I got clean. I found faith. I'm now studying to become a youth minister. I'm writing to thank you for raising such an incredible son and to ask, do you think there's a reason I have his eyes? I wrote back immediately, yes, Matteo, there's definitely a reason. Carlo saw you before he died. He told me about people with his eyes, people who would help me understand why he had to leave so young. You're one of them. I began collecting these stories. Over the next years, more people reached out. A woman in Brazil who looked like Carlo's twin, now running a Catholic media company. A teenager in the Philippines with identical eyes, creating apps for prayer. A middle-aged convert in Australia who had Carlo's eyes and had started a ministry for people leaving atheism. Each one had a story. Each one had been saved or transformed at a crucial moment. Each one was now multiplying Carlo's mission. By 2020, when Carlo was beatified, I had documented 47 people with his eyes. 47 individuals across 6 continents who looked eerily like my son and were all in different ways continuing his work. At Carlo's beatification ceremony, I met 5 of them in person. We stood together. These strangers who looked like family, united by supernatural connection we couldn't explain but couldn't deny. Signora Acutis, one said, do you think Blessed Carlo knew about all of us specifically? I think he knew, I said. Not every detail, but the essence. God showed him that his death would be a seed producing a harvest of souls marked for service. And you're all the proof that his short life had eternal impact. The story continues to unfold. Just last month, I received a video call from a young woman in South Korea. She'd seen photos of Carlo online and was startled by the resemblance. Through tears, she told me how she'd been about to abandon her faith when a friend showed her Carlo's website. His work brought me back to God, and then I saw his photo and realized I have his eyes. What does it mean? It means, I said, you're part of the family, part of the harvest, part of the ongoing mission. Carlos saw you before you even existed in this story, and he prayed for you. And if this testimony has been an answer for you, would you consider leaving a super thanks? This financial support sustains this mission and allows us to continue bringing deep and transformative content to more lives who need this word. Every contribution is a seed that multiplies into hope for thousands of people. Now, write in the comments. One thing you learned from this story so far, just one thing. Because when you articulate what you've learned, you're making a commitment. I need to tell you something else. Carlo predicted that I didn't understand until much later. On that same day, 5 days before his death, after he told me about the woman with his eyes, he said something else. Mom, after I'm gone, you're going to write. You never thought you were a writer, but you'll write about me, about us, about God's faithfulness. And your words will reach millions. I dismissed it completely. Me, a writer? I'd never written anything beyond letters. But Carlo had been insistent. You'll write, Mom. And through your writing, my story will spread. That's how God multiplies seeds, through storytelling. 4 years after his death, after meeting Sophia, I began to understand. People kept asking me to share Carlo's story. At first, just at our parish, then at other parishes, then at conferences and events. Every time I shared it, lives changed. In 2011, a publisher approached me. Would I consider writing a book about Carlo? My first instinct was to say no. I wasn't a writer, but then I remembered. Carlo had predicted this. So I said yes, terrified but trusting. Writing that first book was one of the hardest things I've ever done, not because of the writing itself, but because it meant reliving Carlo's death over and over, processing my grief publicly, exposing my pain for the world to see. The book was published in 2012. I expected maybe a few thousand copies to sell. But something unexpected happened. It became a bestseller, not just in Italy, but internationally. Translated into 30 languages, over 2 million copies sold in the first 5 years. And the messages poured in. Your book saved my marriage. Your book brought me back to God. Your book gave me courage to face cancer. Millions, just as Carlo had predicted. But that wasn't the end of his prophecy about writing. In 2015, I was invited to write another book, specifically about Carlo's prophecies and their fulfillments. I documented everything. The prediction about Sophia, the multiplication of people with his eyes, the unexpected writing career, all of it. That book, published in 2016, reached even more people. And it started a movement. People began looking for others with Carlo's eyes, creating networks, starting ministries, building connections. Carlo had also made predictions about other people that I only learned about years later. In 2018, I received a letter from a priest in Brazil named Father Paulo. He wrote, Signora Acutis, in summer 2006, I was a young seminarian visiting Italy, struggling with my vocation. I was considering leaving seminary. I happened to meet your son Carlo at a church in Milan. We talked for maybe 30 minutes. I told him about my doubts, and he said, Father Paulo, you will be ordained. And in 12 years, you will start a ministry that reaches millions through media. God showed me, don't give up. The letter continued. Signora, I was ordained in 2008. And this year, 2018, exactly 12 years after Carlo's prediction, I launched a Catholic YouTube channel. Within 6 months, we had 2 million subscribers. Carlo saw it all. He knew. I cried reading that letter. Father Paulo had no way of knowing about Carlo's other prophecies, but Carlo had seen his future clearly, specifically, accurately. In 2019, I decided to actively search for other prophecies. I put out a call through Catholic media. If Carlo Acutis had ever told you something prophetic, please contact me. The responses were overwhelming. Over 300 people wrote with stories. Carlo had told someone their child would be healed, and the child was healed 3 years later. He'd told another person they'd become a missionary, and they did. He'd told someone their business would fail, but something better would follow. And it did. Each prophecy was specific, verifiable, documented. This wasn't vague fortune-telling. This was supernatural knowledge given to a 15-year-old boy in his final months, meant to strengthen faith when the prophecies came true. But why? Why had God given Carlo this gift? I prayed about it constantly, and slowly an answer emerged. Carlo's prophecies weren't primarily about showing off supernatural power, they were about proving that death isn't the end. When people received prophecies from a boy who was now dead, and those prophecies came true years after his death, it proved something crucial. Carlo was still alive. Not physically, but spiritually. Still present, still active, still working on earth from heaven. The prophecies were evidence that saints don't retire when they die, they just change locations. They're still engaged in God's mission, still caring about specific people, still interceding for particular outcomes. Carlo had seen our futures because he was going to be part of our futures, even after death. He'd been given a preview so he could pray specifically, intercede accurately, guide supernaturally. In 2020, at Carlo's beatification, I shared some of these prophecy stories publicly for the first time. The response was extraordinary. Thousands more people came forward with their own experiences. But I want to be clear about something. The prophecies weren't what made Carlo holy. His holiness came from his daily faithfulness, daily mass, constant prayer, cheerful service, purity of life. The prophecies were just confirmation of that holiness. God doesn't give supernatural gifts to people who aren't already deeply connected to him. The gifts flow from the relationship. Carlo's relationship with Jesus was so intimate that Jesus shared things with him, showed him things, trusted him with knowledge. That's what I want you to understand. If you want God to speak to you, to show you things, to use you supernaturally, you need to cultivate intimacy with him first. Daily prayer, daily Eucharist, daily faithfulness, that's the foundation. Everything else flows from that. Carlo never treated his prophetic knowledge as something that made him special. He treated it as a responsibility. When God showed him something, Carlo prayed about it, interceded for it, prepared for it. Now I need to tell you about the most recent prophecy fulfillment. This happened just 3 months ago, in October 2024, 18 years after Carlo's death. I received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a journal, old and worn, and a letter. Signora Acutis, this journal belonged to my father. He died last month. In his will, he asked that this be sent to you. His name was Giovanni Rossi. Did you know him? I didn't recognize the name. But when I opened the journal and saw the first entry, dated July 2006, my hands started shaking. The entry read, "Today I met an extraordinary boy named Carlo Acutis. I was at the church for confession, feeling hopeless. This teenager approached me after and said, 'Signore, God wants you to know something. Your suffering right now is preparing you for ministry later. In 18 years, you will help hundreds of people who are going through exactly what you're experiencing now. Your pain has purpose.'" I thought he was crazy. The entry continued. "I'm 45, unemployed, divorced, depressed. What ministry could I possibly have?" But something about the way he said it with such certainty made me write it down. I flipped through the journal. 18 years of entries. Giovanni documenting his slow recovery, his gradual return to faith, his eventual work as a counselor helping divorced men rebuild their lives. And in the final entry, dated September 2024, he wrote, "It's been 18 years since Carlo's prophecy. He was right about everything. I've helped hundreds of men through divorce recovery programs. My pain did have purpose. I'm dying now, cancer, but I'm at peace." Because I know Carlo saw this. He saw that my suffering would be redeemed. I'm sending this journal to his mother so she knows. Her son's words changed my life. I sat on my floor and sobbed. 18 years. Carlo had told this man specifically 18 years. And exactly 18 years later, Giovanni had completed his ministry. The precision, the faithfulness, the perfect timing of God's plans, it was overwhelming. Now I need to tell you the hardest part. The part I've avoided speaking about publicly until now, the part about my anger at God. Because here's what nobody talks about. You can believe in God's faithfulness and still be angry at his methods. You can trust his plan and still hate the cost. You can see the fruit and still mourn the seed that had to die. For years after Carlo died, I was angry. furiously, bitterly angry. At God, at the doctors, at myself for not being able to save him. I went to Mass every day, but sometimes I went just to yell at God in my head. You could have healed him. You perform miracles for strangers. Why not for my son? He served you faithfully. He deserved to live. The anger was complicated by the fact that I could see God working. I could see Carlo's influence spreading, but I didn't want any of it. I wanted my son back. I wanted him alive, physical, present. Is that wrong? I don't know, but it's honest. The turning point came in 2015, 9 years after Carlo's death. I was at his tomb in Assisi, having one of my regular angry conversations with God. I see what you're doing. I see the lives being changed, but I still don't understand why it had to be this way. Why couldn't you accomplish these same things with Carlo alive? And for the first time, I felt an answer. Not audible, but clear. Because grain of wheat. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a single grain, but if it dies, it produces much fruit. I knew the scripture. Jesus had said it about his own death, but I'd never applied it to Carlo. Now suddenly I understood. Carlo's death wasn't a tragedy God permitted. It was a seed God planted. Intentionally, purposefully. Knowing exactly what harvest it would produce. Carlo had to die young because if he'd lived to old age, his influence would have been limited to people he personally met. But dying at 15, becoming a young martyr to illness, that transcended limitations. That could reach millions. But understanding it didn't make me like it. I still wanted my son back. And I had to learn to hold both truths. God's plan is perfect, and my pain is real. Both can be true. God's wisdom doesn't invalidate my grief, and my grief doesn't negate God's wisdom. They coexist, uncomfortably, permanently. We trust a God who allows things we hate for reasons we can barely comprehend. And somehow that's okay. Not because it feels good, but because we've seen enough evidence of his faithfulness to bet our lives on it. I'm telling you this because maybe you're angry at God right now. Maybe he's taken someone you love. Maybe he's allowed suffering you don't understand. That's okay. God can handle your anger. He's big enough for your questions. Your doubt doesn't threaten him. He doesn't need you to pretend everything's fine. He wants your honesty. Carlo taught me that. In his final days, Carlo prayed honest prayers. Jesus, I'm scared. I don't want to die, but I trust you. That's the model. Honesty plus trust. Not fake positivity, but choosing to trust even when we're not okay. Carlo did that. I'm learning to do that, and I invite you to do that too. Be honest about your pain. Don't spiritualize it away. But also, don't let pain have the final word. Let trust have the final word. Trust that God is working even when you can't see it. Trust that your suffering has purpose. Trust that the story isn't over. Here's what I know after 18 years. The pain never completely goes away. I still miss Carlo every single day. I still cry, but the pain is transformed. It's no longer just pain. It's also purpose. It's also power. The pain that nearly destroyed me has become the platform from which I speak hope to others. The grief that isolated me has become the bridge connecting me to other grieving parents. The loss that seemed meaningless has become meaningful. Not because I've moved on, I'll never move on, but because I've moved forward. And there's a difference. Moving on implies leaving Carlo behind. Moving forward means carrying Carlo with me into whatever comes next. His memory, his example, his prophecies, all of it comes with me. He's part of everything I do now. Every book I write, every talk I give, every person I encourage. Carlo is present in it. And that's my hope. Heaven. The promise that death is not permanent separation, just temporary. That I will see Carlo again. That we'll have eternity together. That promise sustains me on hard days. When I'm overwhelmed by missing him, I remind myself this is not forever. This separation has an expiration date. And when that date comes, Carlo will be there waiting, and I'll run to him. And I'll never let go again. Now let me tell you what happened just last week. I received an email from a woman in Canada. She wrote, Signora Acutis, I need to tell you about my daughter. She's 16. Last month, she attempted suicide. We found her in time, saved her life physically, But emotionally, spiritually, she was still dying. She wouldn't talk, wouldn't engage with counselors. We were desperate. Then someone gave me your book. I read it in one night. The next day, I brought it to the hospital and left it on my daughter's bedside table. She ignored it for 2 days, but on the third day, she picked it up. She read it cover to cover, and that night, she spoke her first words. Mom, I want to live. She pointed to Carlo's picture. He had my eyes. Did you notice? I stared at that email for 10 minutes. Another one, another person with Carlo's eyes, marked by God, saved from death, called to purpose. I wrote back, your daughter is part of the family, part of the harvest. Tell her Carlo saw her before she was born. Tell her he's been praying for her from heaven. Tell her God has plans for her life. The woman wrote back, I told her everything you said. She's crying, but they're good tears. She said, I thought I was nobody, but if a saint was praying for me, maybe I matter. But here's what I need you to understand. I didn't save her. Carlo didn't save her. God saved her. We were just instruments. And you can be part of that chain too. You don't need prophetic visions. You just need to be faithful, faithful with what God gives you today, because you never know who needs exactly what you have to offer. You never know whose life will be saved by your story. That's what Carlo did. He was faithful with 15 years, and look at the harvest. Millions of lives touched, hundreds of people marked with his eyes, an entire movement of digital evangelization, all from 15 years of faithfulness. What could God do with your life if you gave him everything? You might not live to see the full harvest. Carlo didn't. But that's not the point. The point is faithfulness. Plant the seeds. Trust God with the harvest. Now, I need to tell you why I've shared this entire testimony. It's not to make you admire Carlo. It's to prove something crucial. God is real. He's involved. He's speaking. He's working. And nothing in your life is random. Every pain has purpose. Every loss has meaning. Every tear is collected. And death is not the end of love or impact or purpose. It's just a transition. Carlo proved that. He died at 15, but his influence is stronger now than when he was alive. And that same principle applies to your life. Whatever you're facing, whatever loss you're carrying, whatever pain seems meaningless, God can use it. God will use it if you let him, if you trust him, if you stay faithful even when it hurts. I know that's hard to hear when you're in the middle of suffering, but I'm living proof it's true. I've walked through the valley of death, watching my son die slowly, unable to help him, questioning everything. And I came out the other side, not unchanged, but transformed. And you can too. Whatever valley you're walking through, God can bring you through it, not around it, through it, with all the pain, all the questions, all the anger, but through it to the other side, where you'll look back and see God was there the whole time, working, weaving, preparing harvest from seeds that seemed dead. That's his specialty, taking what looks finished and making it fruitful. He did it with Carlo's death. He can do it with your loss too, but I need to be honest. This doesn't happen automatically. You have a choice. You can let your pain make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. You can let your loss destroy you or develop you. You can let your grief isolate you or connect you to others who hurt. Carlo's death could have destroyed me. It almost did. But I made a choice, not once, but repeatedly, daily, sometimes hourly, to trust God even when I didn't understand. That's not natural. That's supernatural. That's grace. And that same grace is available to you. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, in this moment, make a decision. Decide that your pain will have purpose. Decide that your loss will create legacy. Decide that your suffering will serve others. Not because you understand how, but because you trust God can make it happen. That's a faith decision. And when you make it, God meets you there. He provides the strength you don't have. He reveals the purpose you can't see. He creates the harvest you couldn't imagine. And if this testimony has been an answer for you, if it's spoken to something in your situation, would you consider leaving a super thanks? This financial support, no matter how small, sustains this mission and allows us to continue bringing transformative content to more lives who need this word. Every contribution is a seed that multiplies into hope for thousands of people. Your support isn't just helping this channel, it's helping every person who watches these videos and finds hope to keep going. Now I want you to write in the comments, Tell me one thing you're taking from this testimony, one truth you're holding on to, one decision you're making. Don't just consume this passively, engage with it actively. Because when you articulate what you've learned, when you declare what you're deciding, you're making a covenant with yourself and with God. So write it, declare it, commit to it. Before I close, I want to pray for you. Wherever you are, whatever you're facing, close your eyes if you can. If not, just receive these words. Heavenly Father, I bring before you every person watching this testimony. You know their names. You know their pain. You know their questions. I ask that you meet them exactly where they are today. Give them grace to trust you even when they don't understand. Give them strength to choose faith over fear. Give them hope to believe their pain has purpose, and use their lives, Father. Take their losses and create legacy. Take their pain and produce purpose. Take their tears and transform them into testimony. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. And blessed Carlo Acutis, pray for us. Pray for everyone who has watched this testimony. Pray especially for those marked with your eyes, who carry the weight of knowing they're called to something significant. Pray for grieving parents who wonder if their child's death had meaning. Pray for anyone contemplating ending their life. Pray for the broken, the lost, the desperate. Intercede for us all. Thank you, Carlo, for your prophecies. Thank you for seeing me, for seeing Sophia, for seeing all of us before we needed to be seen. Thank you for being faithful to deliver messages that seemed crazy but proved true. Thank you for showing us that death is not the end of impact, that 15 years of faithful living can produce centuries of fruit, that ordinary teenagers can become extraordinary saints if they just say yes to God completely. I'll see you in heaven, my son. And on that day, I'll introduce you to all the people you've helped without ever meeting them. All the people marked with your eyes, all the people saved by your intercession, all the people inspired by your example. And we'll rejoice together at how God took your short life and multiplied it beyond anything we imagined. Until then, keep praying for us. Keep interceding. Keep pointing people to Jesus in the Eucharist. To everyone watching, may God bless you abundantly. May He give you courage to trust Him with your pain. May He show you the purpose in your suffering. May He create harvest from seeds you plant today. And may you discover, as I discovered, that God never wastes anything. Not our tears, not our losses, not our deaths. He redeems everything. He transforms everything. He uses everything for His glory and our good. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this testimony with someone who needs hope. Share it with someone who's grieving. Share it with someone who thinks their pain is meaningless. Because it's not. Nothing is meaningless when God is involved. And God is always involved, whether we see it or not. My name is Antonia Acutis. I am the mother of Blessed Carlo Acutis. And this is my testimony of how my son's death became the seed that produced a harvest I never expected but desperately needed. This is proof that God sees, God cares, God works, and God never wastes our pain. He transforms it. He redeems it. He uses it to save others. Your pain can have that same purpose if you let it. Your loss can create that same legacy if you trust God with it. Your suffering can serve others if you choose to let it. The choice is yours. But I promise you, if you say yes to God, if you trust Him with your broken pieces, He will create something beautiful, something eternal, something that matters. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this mission. Thank you for believing that miracles still happen, that prophecies still come true, that God still speaks through the most unexpected people in the most impossible ways. God bless you richly. May Carlo pray for you, and may Mary cover you with her mantle of protection. The story continues. Your chapter is still being written. Make it count. Be faithful, trust God, and watch what He does with your yes.